Welcome to Midnight Mystic Stories. I noticed a lot of you who are watching and enjoying the content aren't subscribed yet. If you love spine-chilling stories, creepy encounters, and unexplained mysteries, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. It really helps the channel grow and helps us keep bringing more of the content you love. And be sure to comment below where you are tuning in from. Thank you and enjoy the video. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy who ends up on one of those true crime podcasts. Not me. I'm just some dude who works in IT, lives in a one-bedroom apartment above a laundromat, and spends most weekends playing video games or rewatching old sitcoms. But here I am, sitting at my kitchen table at 3:17 a.m., typing this because if something happens to me, at least someone will know how it started. It began with a match. That's how it always starts, right? 2 swipes, a few dumb jokes, and suddenly you're texting someone you've never seen in real life. Her name was Lena. Profile picture showed her laughing in front of a mural, sunlight hitting her brown curls, just right. Bio said she liked horror movies, coffee, and long walks that never actually happened. We matched on a Tuesday. By Thursday, we'd sent over 200 messages. She had this way of texting that made you feel like you were the only person in the world she was talking to. Not rushed, not trying too hard, just present. We decided to meet at this little cafe downtown, the kind with mismatched chairs and chalkboard menus. Rain had been falling since morning, the kind that doesn't pour but just hangs in the air like fog with weight. I got there early, ordered a black coffee I didn't really want, and sat by the window watching people rush under umbrellas. When she walked in, I recognized her immediately, but not because of the photo. It was the way she moved. Like she wasn't entirely sure she belonged in the world, like every step was a quiet negotiation. She smiled, sat down, said my name like she'd been saying it for years. We talked about everything. Bad roommates, that one pizza place that closes at midnight, how neither of us liked small talk. She had this laugh that started low and then cracked at the end, like it surprised even her. 2 hours passed like minutes. When she said she had to go, I felt that stupid pang in my chest. The one you get when something good ends too soon. We started seeing each other every few days. Not full-on dating, not yet, but close. She'd show up at my place with takeout. We'd watch movies, talk until our voices got tired. She never stayed the night. Always left by 11, no explanation. Just a quick kiss, and see you soon. I didn't push it. Felt like if I did, she'd disappear. Then came the dreams. At first they were just weird. Walking through empty subway stations, hearing my name whispered from behind closed doors. But they got worse. One night I dreamt she was standing at the foot of my bed, just watching, not smiling, not moving. When I woke up, my window was open, even though I swear I locked it. Rain had soaked the curtains. I didn't tell her. Didn't want to sound crazy, but I started noticing things. Like how she never answered calls. Always texted back, but calls went straight to voicemail. Or how she never posted on social media. No likes, no stories, nothing. And her phone, whenever it buzzed, she'd turn it face down fast, like she didn't want me to see. One night, we were on my couch, shoulder to shoulder, watching some old zombie movie. Halfway through, she froze. On screen, a character whispered, "I know you're in here." Lena's breathing changed. Got shallow. I looked over. Her eyes weren't on the TV. They were fixed on the hallway, like she heard something I didn't. You ever feel a silence that's too heavy? Like the air's pressing down? That's what it was. I followed her gaze. Nothing. Just the dark hallway leading to my bedroom and bathroom. But she stayed like that for a full minute, jaw tight, fingers curled into the blanket. Then she blinked, smiled, said, "Sorry, spaced out." But it wasn't that. It was like she was somewhere else. Or someone else was with us. A week later, I found her phone on my coffee table. She'd left it behind after crashing on the couch. I picked it up, not to snoop, okay, maybe a little, but the screen was cracked, and when I tapped it, it didn't light up. Dead. I plugged it in, waited. After a minute, it turned on. No password. That should have been my first red flag. I didn't go through photos or messages. I just wanted to see her lock screen. But when I swiped, it opened to a note app. One note titled him. I read it. He watches when he thinks I'm asleep. Keeps the door cracked. I can hear him breathing. I pretend I don't know. If I act normal, he leaves me alone. Last time I screamed, he broke my wrist. Mom said I fell. I didn't fall. I remember the stairs. I remember the push. My stomach dropped. I read it again. And again. It didn't make sense. Was this about her dad? An ex? Why would she have this on her phone? And why did it feel like it was written by someone younger? I heard the key in the door. She was back early. I dropped the phone like it burned me. Plugged it back in. Sat on the couch like nothing happened. She walked in, smiled, said she forgot her charger. I mumbled something about being glad she came back, tried to sound normal. But my hand was shaking. That night, I couldn't sleep. The words kept looping in my head. He watches when he thinks I'm asleep. Who was she talking about? And why did it feel like it was about me? Next time we met, I brought it up. Not the note, just asked if she was okay, if anything was wrong. She stared at me like I'd slapped her. Why wouldn't I be okay? She said. Too fast, too sharp. Then she softened, touched my arm. You worry too much. I'm fine. Really? But I wasn't fine. I started checking the locks. Every night. Windows, doors, even the fire escape. I'd wake up convinced I heard footsteps. One morning, I found a coffee mug in the sink that I didn't remember using. Another time, my laptop was open to a search. Sign someone is lying to you. Then came the photo. I was cleaning, moving the couch to vacuum, when I saw it, wedged behind the bookshelf. A printed picture, creased and faded. It showed a little girl, maybe 8 or 9, standing in front of a yellow house. She had brown curls, big eyes. Looked just like Lena. But in the background, half hidden behind the porch post, was a man. Face blurred, but tall, wearing a dark jacket. And his hand, resting on the girl's shoulder. I turned it over. On the back, in shaky handwriting. Asterisk found this in her room after. She never told us. We didn't see asterisk. I didn't recognize the handwriting. But the date, it was from 20 years ago. That's when I did it. I looked her up. Full name, hometown, the works. What I found made my blood stop. Lena Reyes. Born 1990. Died 1998. Car accident. 8 years old. I sat there, staring at the screen, heart slamming. That wasn't possible. I touched her, talked to her, laughed with her. She was real. Unless. I started digging deeper. Old news articles. Police reports. Turns out, the house in the photo was her family's. Her dad, Daniel Reyes, was investigated after her death. No proof, but neighbors said they heard fights. Said the girl was quiet. Always wore long sleeves in summer. Case went cold. And then I found the obituary photo. Same curls. Same eyes. Same smile that cracked at the end. I closed the laptop. Walked to the bathroom. Splashed water on my face. Looked in the mirror. And that's when I saw it. On my neck. Faint, almost invisible. 5 small marks. Like fingertips. I don't remember how I got them. My phone buzzed. A text from Lena. You were supposed to protect me. I looked at the door. It was cracked open, just a sliver. And from the hallway, I heard it. A soft, broken laugh. The kind that starts low and then cracks at the end. I haven't left the apartment since. The lights stay on. All of them. I don't sleep. I just sit, typing this, waiting. Because I think I know the truth now. She's not haunting me. I'm haunting her. I matched with her on a Tuesday night, scrolling through faces like I always do when I can't sleep. Her name was Lena. Profile was simple, just a picture of her laughing in front of a record store, another of her holding a coffee cup in front of some art gallery, and one of her dog, some scruffy little mutt, with one ear flopped over. Nothing wild, nothing that screamed danger. Her bio said she liked long walks, indie films, and rainy afternoons with a good book. Sounded boring, honestly, but in a safe way. The kind of boring you don't mind if it turns into something real. We chatted for a few days. Nothing too deep. She had this way of typing that made everything feel calm, like she wasn't trying too hard. No emojis, no all caps, just clean sentences that didn't leave room for misreading. I liked that. After a week, she suggested meeting at this little cafe downtown, The one with the mismatched chairs and the chalkboard menu that changes every day. I said yes before I even thought about it. The day of the date, it was raining. Not hard, just that soft, steady kind that makes the city look like it's breathing. I got there early, ordered a black coffee, and sat by the window. She walked in 10 minutes late, shaking water off her jacket. That same dog trotting behind her on a leash. She smiled when she saw me, and it wasn't the fake kind people give when they're nervous. It was real. Warm. I remember thinking, this might actually work. We talked for 2 hours. About books, about music, about how much we both hated small talk. She had this laugh, quiet at first, then it'd burst out like she couldn't hold it in. Her dog curled up under the table and fell asleep. At one point, she reached over and fixed my collar, like she'd known me for years. I didn't even flinch. It felt right. She invited me to her place after. Said she had a vinyl of some obscure 80s band I'd mentioned, wanted me to hear it. I hesitated. You hear stories. But she seemed so genuine, and the dog was there, and it was still raining, and honestly, I didn't want the night to end. So I said yes. Her apartment was on the 3rd floor of this old brick building near the river. No elevator, just creaky wooden stairs that groaned under every step. The hallway smelled like cinnamon and something faintly metallic, like old pipes. Her door had a little wreath made of dried flowers. Goo. Normal. Inside it was cozy. Books stacked on shelves, fairy lights strung across the ceiling, a record player in the corner. The dog went straight to a worn-out dog bed in the corner and passed out. She took my coat, hung it up, offered me tea. I said yes again. While she was in the kitchen, I looked around. Nothing weird. No crepe fotos, no verde symbols, no locket doors. Just a regular apartment. We sat on the couch, sipping tea, talking about nothing and everything. She put on the record, soft synth, slow drums, the kind of music that makes you feel like you're floating. At some point, she leaned her head on my shoulder. I put my arm around her. It felt natural, like we'd been doing this for months. Then the lights went out. Not the whole building, just her apartment. 1 second, the fairy lights were glowing. The next, everything was dark. I laughed, said something about the power, but she didn't move. Didn't say anything. I turned to look at her, but she was already facing me. Her eyes caught the faint light from the street lamp outside, and for a second, they looked too big, too dark. It's okay, she whispered. I like the dark. Her voice was the same, but something in it had changed. Smoother, flatter, like she was reading from a script. I started to get that feeling, the one where your skin tightens and your breath gets shallow. I wanted to stand up, to say I should go, but I couldn't move. Not because I was scared, not exactly. It was like my body forgot how. Like my muscles were listening to her instead of me. She reached up, slow, and touched my cheek. Her fingers were cold. You're tense, she said. You don't have to be. I've been watching you for a long time. I tried to speak. Nothing came out. Not just you. She went on. Others too. I watched them. Learned them. Their routines. Their voices. The way they hold their coffee. The way they laugh when no one's looking. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. You're the first one who made it this far. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't respond. It was like I was underwater, moving through syrup. You're probably wondering how, she said. It's not magic. It's practice. I've done this before. 7 times. Each one better than the last. You're the most like him. I didn't know who him was. I didn't want to know. She stood up, walked to the bookshelf, and pulled out a photo album. Flipped it open. Inside were pictures. Dozens of them. All of men. All of them smiling. All of them in places I recognized. My gym, my favorite coffee shop, the park near my apartment. Some of them were me. Recent. From last week. From yesterday. One was me sleeping, taken through my bedroom window. That's how, she said. I don't need to meet them first. I just become them. Learn their voice, their walk, their habits. Then I find someone like them. Someone who'll recognize the pieces. She looked at me. You thought I was real because I acted like someone you could love. But I'm not her. I'm just close. I finally found my voice. Why? She tilted her head, like I'd asked a silly question. Because it's easy. Because no one looks twice at a woman who seems sad and lonely. Because people want to fix things. And because she stepped closer. When you stop resisting, it feels like coming home. I tried to stand. My body twitched, but I stayed seated. My arms were heavy. My vision blurred at the edges. You'll sleep soon, she said. And when you wake up, you won't remember this. You'll think we had a great night, that we're going on another date next week, that you're falling in love. She touched my face again, and I'll be waiting. I fought. I really did. I clenched my fists, tried to scream, but my body wasn't mine anymore. It was like watching a movie of myself from far away. The last thing I saw was her sitting back down, picking up her tea like nothing happened. The record kept playing. The dog snored in the corner. I woke up on my couch this morning. Sunlight through the blinds. My shoes off. My jacket hung up. No memory of getting home. My phone buzzed. A message from Lena. Asterisk, last night was perfect. Can't wait to see you again. Asterisk. I stared at the screen. Something felt off. Not in my head, but in my chest. Like something inside me had shifted. Like a door left open. I went to the bathroom. Looked in the mirror. And for a second, just a flicker, I didn't recognize my own face. Here I am, sitting on my couch with the lights off, staring at my phone like it's gonna bite me, trying to figure out how I got here, how one dumb swipe turned into something I can't explain, something I can't tell anyone because they'd think I'm losing it. And maybe I am. But I swear every word of this is true. It started like any other night. Rain tapping the window. Me scrolling through Tinder out of sheer boredom. My thumb swiped left on a girl holding a pug. Left on someone with concert photos. Left on a guy who definitely wasn't my type. Then her. Her name was Lila. Her first picture wasn't a mirror selfie or a beach shot. It was her hand holding a coffee cup. Steam rising. Sunlight cutting across the table. Simple. Real. Her bio said she liked quiet mornings, old horror movies, and not being ghosted after 2 messages. I liked that. I liked her. I swiped right. Match. We started talking. Not the usual, hey, how's your day crap. She asked me what I thought about dreams, like, why we have them, if they mean anything. I told her I once dreamed I was walking through an empty subway station and the lights kept flickering, and I never reached the end. She said she had that same dream once. That freaked me out a little, but in a good way. Like maybe we were on the same wavelength. We talked for days. She didn't play games. She texted back fast, didn't disappear for hours. It felt easy. Too easy, maybe. We decided to meet at this little diner on 47th and Maple. Nothing fancy. Booths with cracked red vinyl, neon sign buzzing above the counter. I got there early, ordered black coffee. She walked in 10 minutes late, shaking rain off her coat. She looked exactly like her pictures, but more. Her eyes were darker, her voice softer. She smiled and said, "You're taller than I thought." I laughed. We talked for 2 hours. About books, about that one episode of that old show where the guy realizes he's been dead the whole time, about how neither of us like cilantro. It was the most natural conversation I'd had in years. She suggested we take a walk. It had stopped raining. The streets were slick, reflecting the streetlights like oil paintings. We ended up near the river, walking along the path under the bridge. The air was thick, quiet except for the occasional car passing above. She told me she used to come here as a kid. Said she used to believe there was a door under the bridge that only opened at night. I joked that maybe we should look for it. She didn't laugh, just looked at me and said, "It's real." I didn't know what to say. I thought she was messing with me. But she turned and walked toward the concrete wall, running her fingers along the base. I followed, half amused, half creeped. Then I saw it, a gap in the wall, just wide enough to squeeze through. Behind it, a narrow tunnel, pitch black. She pulled out her phone, turned on the flashlight. "Come on," she said. "It's safe." I hesitated, but I didn't want to look like a wuss. So I went in. The air changed fast, colder, damp. The walls were covered in moss. The floor sloped down. We walked for what felt like 10 minutes. My phone had no signal. I kept checking it, just to feel something familiar. Then the tunnel opened into a small chamber. Concrete floor, pipes running along the ceiling. In the middle, an old wooden door, gray with age, a rusted handle. No from. Just sitting there, like it was planted. "This is it," she whispered. I laughed, but it came out shaky. "What, like a secret room?" She didn't answer. Just stepped forward, put her hand on the door. "You ever feel like something's missing? Like there's a part of you that's not here?" I didn't know what to say. I mean, yes, sometimes. Who doesn't? But I didn't expect her to go deep like that, in a damp tunnel under a bridge. I told her, I guess I've always felt like I'm waiting for something to start. She nodded like she already knew. Then she turned the handle. The door opened into darkness. Not empty darkness. It felt full. Like something was on the other side, watching. I stepped back. "Okay, that's enough. This is getting weird." She looked at me, calm. "You don't want to see what's on the other side?" "No, I really don't." She smiled. Not a nice smile. One that didn't reach her eyes. "But you already have." I froze. "What? You've been here before," she said. "You just don't remember." I backed up. My heart was thudding. This isn't funny. I'm leaving. I turned, started walking back through the tunnel. But the path didn't look right. The walls were smoother, the ground flatter. I kept walking, but the exit never came. I pulled out my phone. No light. Dead. I started jogging, then running. But the tunnel just stretched. I stopped, breathing hard. I turned around. Lila was standing behind me. Same calm look. "You can't leave," she said. "Not until you remember." "Remember what? I've never been here." She stepped closer. "You said you dreamed of the subway. The lights flickering. You were looking for someone." "Me." I shook my head. "No, that was just a dream." "It wasn't a dream," she said. "It was a memory. From before." "Before what?" "Before you crossed. Before you forgot." I backed up again. My back hit the wall. "You're insane." She didn't get mad. Just sighed. "You died, Daniel. 3 years ago. Car accident on the bridge above us. You were on your way home from work. Rainy night. You skidded, hit the railing, went over. They never found your body. But you didn't sink. You fell here. This place. The in-between." I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream. But something in her voice, something flat, certain, made me pause. "That's impossible." "Is it?" she said. "Why do you think you never feel settled? Why you keep dreaming of tunnels and doors? You've been trying to find your way back. But you can't go back. Not unless you remember who you are." I closed my eyes. Tried to think. But my memories felt thin. Like pages stuck together. I remember my job. My apartment. My mom calling on Sundays. But nothing before 2 years ago. I always thought I had a bad memory. But now I wasn't so sure. Lila stepped forward. "I've been waiting for you. I was supposed to help you cross. But you ran. Last time. You were scared. So you stayed. Wondering. Forgetting. Living a fake life. But it's not real, Daniel. None of it." I looked down at my hands. They looked solid. I could feel the cold air. My breath came out in clouds. "If I'm dead, why do I feel everything?" "Because you believe you're alive," she said. "And belief is strong here. But it's fading. That's why you've been feeling off. Why the dreams got worse. The longer you stay, the more you unravel." I thought about it. The burrito on Tuesdays. My coworker who always steals my yogurt. My landlord who never fixes the heater. It all felt so real. But now it felt like a story I'd been told, not lived. What happens if I remember? I asked. "You can choose," she said. "You can let go. Cross over. Or you can stay. But if you stay, you'll forget again. And next time, it'll be harder to wake up." I looked at the door. It was still open. Beyond it, darkness. But not empty. I could feel something, warm, quiet. Like a room with a fire, and someone waiting. "What's on the other side?" I whispered. "Peace," she said. "Or whatever you need it to be." I took a step forward. Then another. Lila didn't follow. I stopped at the door. "Look back." She was smiling now. A real one. "I'll see you on the other side," she said. I stepped through. It wasn't dark. It was morning. Sunlight through trees. A path leading into the woods. Birds chirping. I took a breath. It felt clean. Like I'd been holding my breath for years. I started walking. And then I woke up. On my couch. Phone in hand. Rain tapping the window. Same as before. Same burrito wrapper on the table. Same hum of the fridge. But something's off. My phone. I check my messages. No Lila. Search my matches. Nothing. Like she never existed. I opened the front door. Walked downstairs. Followed the path to the river. Found the bridge. Looked under it. No gap. No tunnel. Just concrete and graffiti. I stood there for an hour. Then I went home. Now I'm writing this because I need to remember. Because last night I dreamed again. Same subway. Flickering lights. But this time I saw a door at the end. And standing next to it, Lila. She was holding her hand out. I think she's right. I think I've been here before. And I think I'm running out of time. I had always thought of Tinder as a game, a casual way to meet people when boredom struck, swiping left and right like I was brushing away the dust on my phone screen. That evening, I was lounging on my couch, scrolling through profiles, when I stumbled upon her. Brianna, with her striking green eyes and a smile that looked like she was hiding some kind of secret. Her bio was short, sweet, and just a little mysterious, hinting at adventures that made me want to know more. I swiped right, and to my surprise, we matched almost instantly. We started chatting, and the conversation flowed like we had known each other for years. She mentioned she loved the thrill of exploring abandoned places, something that sent a thrill down my spine. I had always been drawn to the eerie beauty of forgotten buildings, so I suggested we meet at an old, decrepit amusement park on the outskirts of town. The park had been shut down for years, a shadow of its former self, with rusting rides and overgrown foliage reclaiming the land. Brianna agreed, her enthusiasm palpable through the screen. The day arrived, and I parked my car just outside the entrance, the sun hanging low in the sky, casting elongated shadows that danced across the cracked pavement. My heart raced a little as I stepped through the gap in the chain-link fence, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and decay. The place was a ghost town, silent except for the rustling leaves and the distant call of crows. I felt a mix of excitement and dread as I wandered deeper into the park, my sneakers crunching on the gravel. Brianna was already there, leaning against the remnants of a carousel, her silhouette framed by the fading light. She looked even more beautiful in person, and the way her eyes sparkled made me forget about the eerie atmosphere surrounding us. We wandered through the park together, exchanging stories, laughing nervously as we passed the warped rides and broken games. It felt like a scene from a movie, the kind where two characters discover a hidden world, a place where reality blurred with fantasy. As twilight descended, the shadows grew longer and the air turned cooler. Brianna suggested we check out the old funhouse, a towering structure with cracked mirrors and peeling paint. I hesitated for a moment, the thought of entering a place filled with distorted reflections and dark corners sending a chill down my spine. But her adventurous spirit was contagious, and I couldn't refuse her. We stepped inside, the door creaking ominously behind us. The funhouse was a labyrinth of mirrors, each reflection twisting our images into grotesque shapes. I felt a strange sense of unease as we wandered through, the laughter from outside fading away, replaced by an unsettling silence. Brianna led the way, her silhouette flickering in and out of view as the mirrors played tricks on my mind. I tried to shake off the feeling that we weren't alone, but every creak of the floorboards seemed to echo in the stillness, amplifying the tension. We stumbled upon a room filled with shattered glass, remnants of what used to be a joyful place now turned sinister. My heart raced as I caught sight of a reflection that didn't match my movements. I turned quickly, but there was nothing there. Just my imagination, I told myself. Brianna was 2 steps ahead, her laughter ringing out, but it felt strained, as if the atmosphere was getting to her too. I felt the urge to leave, but a part of me wanted to stay, to unravel the mystery of this place. Brianna suggested we go deeper, and against my better judgment, I followed her. The path twisted and turned until we found ourselves in a dimly lit room that felt as though it had been untouched for years. Dust motes floated in the beams of fading light, and my skin prickled with unease. Then I saw it, a door slightly ajar at the far end, an invitation or a warning. I couldn't tell. Brianna pushed it open, revealing a small room cluttered with forgotten toys and broken furniture. It looked like a time capsule of childhood joy turned to despair. I stepped in, the air thick with must and something else, something I couldn't quite place. That's when I noticed the walls, covered in scribbled messages and drawings, some of which were disturbing, depicting twisted faces and scenes that sent shivers down my spine. Brianna seemed unfazed, her attention caught by a dusty old teddy bear in the corner. She picked it up, brushing off the dirt, and I watched as a flicker of something crossed her face. Was it nostalgia or horror? I couldn't tell. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. The air grew heavier, and a sense of dread settled in my stomach. I felt as though we were no longer alone. I could hear faint whispers, the kind that seemed to echo off the walls. But when I turned to Brianna, she was staring at the bear as if it were alive. I called her name, but she didn't respond. Time seemed to stretch as I stood there, anxiety clawing at my mind. I backed away slowly, my instincts screaming at me to leave. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices that felt like they were coming from the very walls. I turned to leave, but the way we had come felt different, as if the funhouse itself was shifting around us. And then I felt it, a cold hand on my shoulder. I spun around, heart pounding, and came face to face with a figure cloaked in shadow. The air turned icy, and for a moment, I was paralyzed with fear. It wasn't Brianna. It was something else, a flicker of darkness that seemed to swallow the light. I bolted, racing through the twisted hallways, the whispers morphing into shrieks behind me. I could hear Brianna's laughter again, but it was twisted, echoing in ways that felt wrong. I stumbled, nearly falling, as I tried to find my way out. Panic surged through my veins, and I could feel the walls closing in, the funhouse becoming a maze with no exit. Finally, I burst through the door, bursting into the open air, gasping for breath. I looked back, expecting to see Brianna, but the funhouse stood silent, a dark silhouette against the fading twilight, the whispers now just a distant memory. I called for her, but there was no answer. I ran back to my car, heart racing, desperate to escape the nightmare I had just experienced. As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see her standing there, waiting for me. But instead, I saw the reflection of the funhouse, its windows dark and foreboding. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket, and I pulled it out, my hands shaking. A new message from Brianna popped up. "Where did you go?" "I'm still in the funhouse. Come back, I found something amazing." My blood ran cold. I looked back at the funhouse, now just a shadow in the distance. I could have sworn I saw her silhouette standing at the entrance, beckoning me to return. But I knew better. I took a deep breath and drove away, the whispers of the funhouse fading into the night, leaving only the memory of Brianna's haunting smile lingering in my mind. I had always been skeptical about Tinder. It felt like a digital meat market, where every swipe could either lead you to a potential soulmate or a complete disaster. But after months of being ghosted and left on read, I figured why not? I signed up, made my profile, and started swiping. Most of my matches were just casual chats that fizzled out, but then I stumbled upon his profile. He had this mysterious vibe, with a smirk that hinted at secrets untold. His bio was minimalistic, just a quote about the beauty of darkness. I was intrigued, and instinctively, I swiped right. Almost immediately, we matched, and his enthusiasm was palpable through the screen. He suggested meeting up at a small, dimly lit coffee shop that was known for its gothic ambience. It was the kind of place that felt like stepping into another world. The night of our date was chilly, the kind of cold that makes you pull your jacket tighter around yourself. As I walked to the cafe, the fog rolled in thick, swallowing the street lamps in a soft, ghostly glow. I felt a mix of excitement and anxiety as I entered the cafe, the heavy wooden door creaking ominously behind me. The atmosphere was thick with the scent of roasted beans and something sweet. Maybe pastries, maybe something else. I spotted him in the corner, illuminated by a single flickering candle. He was tall, with dark hair that fell just above his eyes, and a smile that felt both inviting and unsettling. As I approached, I felt a chill run down my spine, but I brushed it off, chalking it up to nerves. He stood up and waved me over, and I couldn't help but notice how his eyes seemed to flicker like the candlelight, filled with a strange intensity. The conversation flowed surprisingly well at first, a mix of laughter and shared interests. He talked about his love for horror movies and the thrill of getting lost in creepy stories, and I found myself drawn to his passion. But as the night wore on, the topics turned darker. He began recounting urban legends, tales of disappearances, and haunted places. I felt an unease creeping in, a subtle shift in the air around us. With each passing story, I could sense his excitement growing, and it was contagious. Yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was relishing the fear he was instilling in me. The coffee shop grew emptier, the shadows deepening as the clock ticked closer to closing time. I glanced around, noticing how the barista was cleaning up, casting wary glances our way, as if he could sense the tension brewing at our table. Just as I started to feel uncomfortable, he leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. He spoke of a nearby forest, one that was said to be haunted by those who had vanished without a trace. The thrill in his eyes was palpable, and I felt the urge to laugh nervously, but it caught in my throat. Instead, I smiled weakly, hoping he would change the subject. But he didn't. He suggested we take a walk in that very forest after the cafe closed, a challenge laced in his words. My heart raced. There was something intoxicating about the idea of venturing into the unknown, but also a voice in my head screaming that it was a terrible idea. Yet, curiosity won over caution, and I found myself nodding. As we left the cafe, the night felt heavier, the fog wrapping around us like a shroud. The forest was just a short walk away, and every step felt like a descent into a different world. The trees loomed ahead, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal hands. I could barely see the path, illuminated only by the faint light of my phone. Once we entered the forest, I felt a profound shift in the atmosphere. The sounds of the city faded, replaced by the rustling of leaves and the occasional call of a night bird. My heart raced with excitement and fear, my instincts screaming at me to turn back. But he seemed unfazed, moving deeper into the woods with a confident stride. He began to tell more stories, this time about people who had gone missing in these very woods. The way he spoke, with such fervor and detail, made my skin crawl. I could almost feel the presence of those lost souls, their stories lingering in the air like a warning. I wanted to laugh it off, to lighten the mood, but the words stuck in my throat. As we ventured deeper, the trees began to close in around us, casting long, eerie shadows. I felt the weight of the darkness pressing down, and I was suddenly hyper-aware of every sound. A branch snapped somewhere behind us, and I instinctively reached for my phone, the glow providing a small sense of security. He seemed to sense my growing unease and turned to face me, his expression shifting. The smile that once captivated me now felt predatory, his eyes glinting with something unsettling. I managed to stammer out a joke, trying to dispel the tension, but it fell flat. Then, out of nowhere, he suggested we play a game of secrets. The idea made my stomach twist. He would share a dark secret, and then I would share one in return. I hesitated, feeling the gravity of the request. I had never been one to open up easily, especially not to someone I barely knew. But his gaze was intense, almost demanding. So, I took a breath and shared a minor secret, something harmless about my high school crush. He chuckled, but then his smile faded, and he leaned closer, his breath warm against my skin. It was my turn to listen, and I felt my heart pound as he revealed his secret about a friend who had vanished in these woods. The way he spoke was so vivid, so detailed. It felt like he was painting a picture of horror in my mind. I wanted to laugh it off, but instead, I could feel a knot tightening in my stomach. I tried to change the subject, but he only leaned in closer, the shadows of the forest swallowing us whole. The atmosphere shifted again, and I felt the urge to run. My instinct screamed at me that something was off. that I was in over my head. Before I could voice my concerns, he pulled out a small flashlight and shone it around us, revealing a path that seemed to lead deeper into the woods. He suggested we keep going, that the real adventure awaited. That's when I felt it, a creeping dread that wrapped around my heart like a vice. I hesitated, my feet rooted to the ground. He was suddenly much closer, his smile now a mere smirk. I could see the glint in his eyes, a flicker of something that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I felt trapped, like prey caught in a predator's gaze. Finally, I mustered the courage to turn and start walking back the way we came. But he grabbed my arm, and I froze, my heart racing. In that moment, I could see the mask slipping, the darkness lurking just beneath the surface. He didn't say a word, but his expression changed, morphing from playful to something sinister. I could feel the cold air closing in, the shadows growing darker around us. Panic surged through me, and I tore my arm from his grip and sprinted into the forest, branches scratching at my skin as I pushed past them. The sounds of pursuit echoed behind me, the crunching of leaves growing louder. I stumbled forward, the flashlight flickering in my hand, illuminating the twisted path ahead. My thoughts raced as I navigated through the darkness, my heart pounding like a war drum. As I emerged from the trees, I found myself back at the coffee shop, the faint glow of the windows shining like a lighthouse in the night. I burst through the door, gasping for breath, and collapsed at a table. The barista looked concerned, but I was too shaken to explain. Minutes passed, and I finally dared to glance out the window. I half expected to see him lurking in the shadows, but the street was empty, the fog rolling in slowly. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but it was short-lived. Then, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, heart racing when I saw a new message from him. "You think you can run? You never really left the woods." Chills ran down my spine as I looked back at the darkened street, the world around me suddenly feeling eerily quiet, as if holding its breath for the next act in this twisted game. I should have known better. I mean, who really meets someone on a dating app and expects it to end well? But there I was, scrolling through Tinder one Friday night, half-heartedly swiping left and right while trying to avoid the same old predictable bios. That's when I stumbled upon her profile. Her name was Clara, and her photos had a sort of vintage flair that caught my eye. She looked like she had just stepped out of a classic film. Soft curls, a warm smile, and a hint of mystery in her gaze. The caption said something about loving the thrill of the unknown, and I couldn't help but wonder what that meant. We matched almost instantly. I was surprised at how quickly she replied. Her messages were witty and engaging, and we fell into a rhythm that felt effortless. Clara spoke about her love for exploring abandoned places, and at first, I thought it was just a quirky interest, but there was a gleam in her words that made my heart race. She suggested we meet up the following weekend, and I found myself saying yes before I could even think about it. The location she picked was a small, run-down amusement park on the outskirts of town, rumored to be haunted. I felt a thrill at the idea, a mix of excitement and dread. The night of our date, the air was thick with mist, and the moon hung low in the sky, casting haunting shadows across the cracked pavement as I parked. The amusement park loomed ahead, its once vibrant colors faded into a ghostly palette. The rusty rides creaked in the wind, and the smell of damp earth filled my lungs. I hesitated for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest. Was this really a good idea? But Clara's face flashed in my mind, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about exploring the unknown. I pushed the door open, stepping into the darkness that enveloped the park. I wandered through the remnants of the past, the faint sound of my footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. The Ferris wheel stood tall but lifeless, its cars swaying gently as if beckoning me closer. I felt an odd chill run down my spine, but I brushed it off. This was all part of the adventure, right? My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I pulled it out to see a message from Clara. "I'm here. Where are you?" I glanced around, trying to spot her. The park felt like a maze of shadows, every corner hiding secrets from the past. I texted back, saying I was near the entrance, but there was no response. I waited, pacing nervously, but something about the silence sent a wave of anxiety through me. I decided to head deeper into the park, hoping to find her. As I walked, the atmosphere grew heavier, and I could hear the distant sound of what I thought was laughter. But it was off, distorted, echoing in a way that made my skin crawl. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck rise. With every step, I searched for signs of Clara, but the more I wandered, the more I realized I was alone. Minutes turned into what felt like hours, and I began to question my decision. Just as I was about to turn back, I spotted a flickering light near the old funhouse, the warped mirrors reflecting back a fragmented version of reality. I hesitated, the urge to run battling with my curiosity. Maybe Clara was inside. I took a deep breath and moved toward the light. Inside the funhouse, the air was stale, and the floor creaked beneath my weight. The walls were a kaleidoscope of colors, but they only added to the disorienting atmosphere. I felt like I was walking through a twisted dream. I called out for Clara, but my voice echoed back, swallowed by the shadows. I stepped cautiously, the laughter I had heard earlier resurfacing in my mind. It felt closer now, almost like it was mocking me. As I approached a mirror, I caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye. A figure stood in the reflection behind me, but when I turned, there was nothing there. My heart raced as I turned back to the mirror, my mind racing with thoughts. Was it just my imagination? I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I could almost feel the weight of someone's gaze boring into my back. Suddenly, my phone buzzed again, breaking the tension. It was Clara. "I'm in the funhouse. Come find me." The message sent a jolt of hope through me, but there was something off about it. I could feel my instincts screaming at me, urging me to leave. But curiosity and concern propelled me deeper into the maze. I navigated through the winding corridors, the laughter growing louder, more chaotic. It felt like a sinister symphony, and I felt the panic rising in my chest. I could hear Clara's voice now, soft and melodic, intertwined with the laughter. It was both comforting and unsettling. I followed the sound, my heart pounding, until I reached a room filled with mirrors. This was it. I stepped inside, my breath hitching in my throat. There she was, standing in the center, her back to me, her dark hair cascading down her shoulders like a waterfall. I called out her name, but she didn't turn around. Instead, the laughter erupted, echoing off the walls, and I felt a chill seep into my bones. I took a step closer, and the moment I did, Clara's head whipped around, her eyes wide and almost feral. The warmth I had felt from her earlier had vanished, replaced by something cold and calculating. My stomach dropped as I realized the truth in that moment. This wasn't the Clara I had been chatting with. This was something else entirely. "Why did you come?" she asked, her voice low and dripping with a sweetness that felt wrong. "You shouldn't have come here." Panic surged through me, and I turned to run, but the mirrors distorted my reflection, making me feel trapped within a twisted carnival of my own mind. I stumbled backward, trying to find the exit, but the laughter morphed into a cacophony of voices, each one pulling me deeper into the funhouse's grip. I could feel Clara's presence behind me, a predator waiting to pounce. I finally managed to find a door, yanking it open and bursting out into the night air. I didn't stop running until I reached my car, fumbling with my keys as I glanced back at the funhouse. The laughter still echoed in my ears, mingling with Clara's haunting gaze. As I drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling of being followed. Every shadow felt elongated, every corner of my eye filled with something lurking just out of sight. I made it home, slamming the door behind me, the adrenaline still coursing through me. I collapsed onto my bed, trying to breathe normally, but the images of Clara's twisted smile haunted my thoughts. The next morning, I woke up in a cold sweat, convinced it was all a bad dream. I picked up my phone to check for messages, hoping for some semblance of normalcy. But my heart sank when I saw the notifications. Clara had messaged me again, but this time the words chilled me to the bone. "I'll find you, and next time, you won't escape." I stared at the screen, my blood running cold. I thought I had left the nightmare behind, but I realized it was only just beginning. Clara was still out there, and I could feel the weight of her gaze from the shadows, waiting for me to let my guard down again. It all started on a whim. One Friday night, with nothing but a bag of chips and a Netflix binge on my mind, I swiped open Tinder. Just a few mindless swipes turned into a match with a girl named Lily. Her profile was a mix of quirky humor and stunning photos that made me think, why not? We exchanged a few messages, and it didn't take long before she proposed meeting in person. I was a little hesitant at first, but the allure of her charming smile and the thrill of the unknown pulled me in. We agreed to meet at this little cafe tucked away in the heart of the city. It was one of those places that had a vintage vibe with mismatched furniture and fairy lights hanging from the ceiling. I arrived a bit early, nervous energy buzzing through me. I ordered a coffee and sat in a corner, scanning the door for any sign of her. The cafe was buzzing with chatter, but it felt like I was in my own little world, the warmth of the place contrasting sharply with the chill running down my spine as I thought about how this was my first real date in a long time. When Lily finally walked in, my heart skipped a beat. She was even more beautiful in person, her eyes sparkling with mischief. We chatted for a while, the conversation flowing effortlessly as we discovered mutual interests in music and movies. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting eerie shadows across the cafe, I noticed something unsettling about her. It was subtle at first, a flicker of something dark behind her laughter, a pause that lasted a moment too long when I asked about her family. I brushed it off as nerves, convincing myself it was just the first date awkwardness. As the night wore on, we decided to take a walk through the nearby park. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and fallen leaves, and the streetlights cast long, distorted shadows on the path. We walked side by side, her laughter echoing in the stillness. But something about the way she looked at me sent a jolt of unease through my body. Her gaze felt intense, almost predatory. I tried to shake off the feeling, focusing instead on the pleasant sounds of the park, the rustling leaves, the chirping crickets, the occasional distant laugh. Then, without warning, she stopped and turned to me, her expression shifting. It was like a mask had slipped, revealing something darker beneath. She asked me if I believed in fate. I laughed it off, but her eyes bore into mine, searching for something I couldn't quite understand. There was a weight to her words that made my skin crawl. I shrugged it off, telling myself it was just the tension of a first date, but I felt an instinctive urge to step back. We continued walking, but I felt a growing sense of dread. The park was eerily quiet now, the sounds of the city muffled as if the world had taken a breath and held it. I glanced at my phone, the battery almost dead. Just then, she suggested we head to her place for a drink. I hesitated. My gut churned, but curiosity got the better of me. I agreed, and we made our way to her apartment, which was only a few blocks away. The building was old, with creaky stairs and flickering lights. As we climbed to her floor, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being drawn into something I didn't fully understand. Her apartment was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of something sweet, almost cloying. She offered me a drink, and I accepted, trying to relax. But as we talked, the atmosphere shifted again. The cozy warmth of the cafe was gone, replaced by something sinister and suffocating. Lily's demeanor changed. She became more animated, her laughter ringing hollow against the walls. She spoke of her past in fragmented sentences, weaving stories that were both captivating and unsettling. There were whispers of heartbreak and betrayal, cryptic references to people she had lost. Each story felt like a thread, leading me deeper into her world, a world that felt increasingly surreal. As I took a sip from my glass, I noticed a shadow flit across the wall, a dark figure that seemed to pulse with the flickering light. I turned to look, but there was nothing there. I tried to laugh it off, convincing myself it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But then the room felt colder, the air thickening like a heavy fog. I could feel the walls closing in, an invisible pressure building around me. Suddenly, she leaned closer, her breath warm against my ear, and whispered something that made my blood run cold. She spoke of a connection she felt, something that could bind us together in ways I couldn't fully comprehend. It felt like she was speaking a language of shadows, and I was the unwitting participant in her dark narrative. My pulse quickened, and I took another sip of my drink, suddenly aware of how quickly I was consuming it. The edges of my vision blurred, and panic surged through me. I needed to leave. But when I stood up, the room spun. I staggered, my heart racing as I blinked to clear my vision. Her smile was wide, almost manic, and I saw a glint of something sharp in her eyes. I stumbled toward the door, my instincts screaming at me to escape. But Lily moved fast, her hand gripping my arm, her nails digging in painfully. She leaned in closer, her voice a low, haunting whisper that sent chills racing down my spine. That was when I noticed the walls of her apartment weren't just bare. They were covered in photographs, each one depicting a different person, their faces twisted in expressions of fear and despair. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. I wasn't the first, and I wouldn't be the last. Each photo told a story, a fragment of her twisted past. My mind raced as I realized I was trapped in a web of her making, a pawn in her game. With a surge of adrenaline, I broke free from her grasp and bolted for the door. My heart pounded in my chest as I fumbled with the doorknob, the weight of her gaze burning into my back. I could hear her laughter behind me, echoing like a haunting melody as I finally burst out into the hallway. I ran down the stairs, my feet pounding against the cold concrete, the sense of impending doom driving me forward. I burst through the front door and into the night, gasping for breath as I stumbled onto the street. The world outside felt surreal, the sounds of the city a distant hum as I raced away from that apartment, from Lily, from whatever darkness waited behind her eyes. Finally, I reached the safety of the streetlights, the glow casting a protective circle around me. I turned to look back, my heart still racing, half expecting to see her standing at the door, her silhouette framed by the light. But there was nothing, just the empty street, a ghost of the night that had turned from thrilling to terrifying in the blink of an eye. As I made my way home, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had escaped something far worse than a bad date. I pulled out my phone to block her number, but as I did, a notification popped up. It was a message from her, sent just seconds after I had left. My heart dropped as I read it. "You can't escape your fate. I'll see you again." The words echoed in my mind, wrapping around me like a cold shroud, tightening with each breath. I realized then that this wasn't just a bad Tinder date. It was the beginning of something far more sinister, a twisted game that I had unknowingly stepped into. And as the realization sank in, I couldn't help but wonder how long it would be before Lily came looking for me again. I'll never forget the day I decided to dive into the world of online dating. My friends were constantly pushing me to try Tinder. "It's fun. Just swipe right and see what happens," they said, all wide-eyed with excitement. I had my doubts but figured why not. I had just gotten out of a long relationship, and the prospect of meeting someone new was enticing. That evening, I found myself sitting at my kitchen table, half-heartedly scrolling through profiles. Most of the guys looked like they were auditioning for a reality show. Too many selfies and over-the-top bios. But then, I stumbled upon his profile. His name was Jake. He had this warm smile and a glint in his eyes that drew me in. Our conversation flowed easily, so much so that it felt like we had known each other for years. After a few days of chatting, we decided to meet up. He suggested a cozy cafe on the outskirts of town, one I had never heard of before. I agreed, not thinking much of it. The day of the date, I dressed casually, wanting to look cute but comfortable. The cafe was tucked away behind a row of trees, the kind of place you'd miss if you weren't looking for it. As I walked in, the scent of freshly brewed coffee and baked goods enveloped me, and for a moment, I felt a wave of calm wash over me. Jake was already there, sitting in a corner booth, sipping on what looked like a latte. He looked even better in person, his tousled hair and casual attire somehow making him more appealing. We chatted over coffee, sharing stories and laughing, but as the sun began to set, I noticed something strange about him. There was a flicker of something in his eyes, an intensity that made me feel slightly uneasy. When I asked about his job, he became evasive, changing the subject back to me. Time slipped away as we talked, and I lost track of how many hours we had spent there. I felt a strange connection with him, but an inexplicable tension hung in the air. After our drinks, he suggested we take a walk around the nearby park. I agreed, thinking a change of scenery would do us good. The park was beautiful, with tall trees, casting long shadows in the dimming light. As we walked, Jake took my hand, and I felt a chill run up my spine. It wasn't that I was uncomfortable. It was more like a warning bell ringing softly in my mind. We wandered deeper into the park, where the trees grew thicker and the sounds of the city faded away. It felt surreal, almost like stepping into a different world. I tried to shake off the eerie feeling creeping in, convincing myself it was just the darkness that made everything feel off. Jake continued to talk, but his words started to blur together. I felt like I was in a trance, the atmosphere shifting, heavy with unspoken tension. Suddenly, he stopped and turned to me, his expression serious. I thought he was going to confess something, but instead, he asked me a bizarre question about my childhood fears. I chuckled nervously, unsure of how to respond. My mind raced, recalling all the things that used to keep me up at night, but I brushed it aside. I wanted to keep things light, but something in his gaze made me feel like I was being scrutinized. Then, without warning, he stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. He spoke about how people often hide their true selves behind a facade, and how fear can reveal one's most authentic nature. I felt my heart race, caught off guard by the intensity of his words. I tried to laugh it off, but he didn't seem to catch the hint. Instead, he leaned in even closer, and I could smell the faint scent of cologne mixed with something earthy and unsettling. A branch snapped behind us, and I jumped, glancing over my shoulder. The park felt desolate, the shadows stretching longer as night settled in. I suggested we head back, but Jake insisted we keep walking. Something in his demeanor shifted, and the playful banter was replaced by a heavier atmosphere, thick with an unnameable dread. We ventured further into the park, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. I could hear the rustling of leaves and the distant sound of a car horn, but they felt muted, as if we had entered a void. Jake's grip on my hand tightened, and I felt a surge of panic. My instinct screamed at me to run, but I didn't want to seem rude. He stopped again, this time in front of an old wooden bench, partially hidden by overgrown bushes. The moonlight barely illuminated it, casting unsettling shadows. He sat down and pulled me down beside him. The air felt charged, electric, and I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I wanted to leave, but something held me there, as if I was caught in a web. Jake leaned in closer, and I could sense the shift in his energy. He began to speak about darker things, fear, betrayal, and how people often get what they deserve. I tried to shift the conversation back to lighter topics, but the more I resisted, the more intense he became. There was a glint in his eye, and I could feel my heart racing, pounding against my chest like a wild animal trying to escape. And then, the world around us shifted again. I heard whispers, echoing through the trees, but when I turned to look, there was no one there. My mind raced. Was I imagining it? I glanced back at Jake, and for a moment, I didn't recognize him. The warmth of his smile had faded, replaced by a chilling detachment. I stood up abruptly, my legs shaking. I had to get out of there. I made some excuse about needing to get home, but he didn't seem to understand. His expression darkened, and I felt a wave of fear wash over me. I turned to run, but he grabbed my wrist, his grip like iron. In that moment, everything shifted. The park, the shadows, the whispers, they all coalesced into a single, horrifying realization. I was not just on a date, I was in a trap. I managed to wrench my arm free and sprinted back the way we came, branches scratching at my arms as I pushed through the underbrush. As I ran, I could hear him calling after me, the sound echoing off the trees. "You can't escape your fears," he shouted, his voice warped and distant. I didn't look back, my heart pounding in my ears, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I finally burst through the edge of the park and into the streetlights, gasping for breath. I kept running, my mind racing with confusion and terror. I didn't stop until I reached my apartment, slamming the door behind me and locking it tight. I leaned against the door, trying to catch my breath, the adrenaline still buzzing through me. I had escaped, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. The next day, I received a message from Jake. It was simple. "I hope you faced your fears." My stomach dropped. I didn't know what that meant, but it felt like a warning. I blocked him, trying to rid myself of the creeping dread that had settled in my bones. Days turned into weeks, and I tried to forget about that night. but I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. I began to notice small things, shadows moving outside my window, strange sounds in the night. Then one afternoon, I received a package at my door. It was unmarked, just a plain brown box. My heart raced as I opened it. Inside was a collection of photographs, all of me, walking home, sitting at my favorite cafe, even a few taken through my window. The last picture sent chills down my spine. It was of me sitting on my couch, completely unaware of the camera. I stared at it in disbelief, my mind racing. He was still watching me. What had I gotten myself into? The fear that had been simmering beneath the surface erupted into a full-blown panic. I knew I had to do something. But what? As I sat there, trembling, I received another message. You can't run from your fears. They always find you. I was trapped in a nightmare, and I had no idea how to wake up. The shadows outside my window grew darker, and I could feel the weight of his gaze watching me from the darkness. As the walls closed in, I realized that the real horror wasn't Jake. It was the fear that had taken root inside me, a fear I could never truly escape. I thought I knew what I was getting into when I swiped right on Sarah. Her profile was the perfect mix of cute and edgy, with a picture of her grinning next to a massive, fluffy dog. The bio was witty and charming, mentioning her love for horror movies and coffee shop hopping. I figured we'd hit it off right away. We exchanged messages that felt electric, and soon enough, we decided to meet at a small cafe downtown. The atmosphere in that cafe was cozy and warm. Soft indie music played in the background, and the scent of freshly brewed coffee hung in the air. However, as I waited for Sarah, I couldn't shake off this weird feeling in the pit of my stomach. It was a slight unease, one that whispered to me that maybe I wasn't ready for this. But I brushed it off, reminding myself that it was just nerves. When she walked in, I felt my heart race. She was even prettier in person, with her long, dark hair cascading over her shoulders and her smile lighting up the room. We hit it off immediately, diving into conversations about our favorite horror films and the most terrifying books we'd ever read. But as the evening progressed, there was something about her that felt off. She had an intensity in her gaze, an almost predatory focus whenever she talked. I tried to ignore it, telling myself that it was just her passion for the genre. But every time she laughed, it seemed to echo just a bit too loudly. And when she leaned in to share a particularly gruesome story, I noticed that her fingers trembled slightly. As the night wore on, I suggested we take a walk in the nearby park, hoping the fresh air would ease my tension. The park was dimly lit, with flickering streetlights casting eerie shadows. The autumn leaves crunched under our feet, and the cold air nipped at my skin. It should have felt romantic, but instead, a shiver ran down my spine. We walked in silence for a while, and I tried to steer the conversation back to lighter topics. But Sarah seemed unfazed by my attempts, her mind clearly wandering elsewhere. It was as if she was lost in a world of her own, and I was just a spectator. I felt like I was peeling back layers of her personality, but instead of revealing something warm and inviting, I was unearthing a cold abyss. Then she mentioned a horror movie marathon happening at her place the following weekend. I hesitated. I liked horror, but something about the invite felt too sudden, too intimate. Still, curiosity got the best of me, and I agreed. We exchanged numbers, and I felt a flutter of excitement mingled with dread. The week crawled by, and I found myself obsessing over our encounter. I replayed every moment in my head, trying to decipher what had gone wrong. It wasn't until Friday night, the night of the marathon, that I finally convinced myself to stop overthinking and just go. Arriving at her apartment was another experience altogether. The building was old, with creaky floorboards and dim lighting that made everything feel shadowy and claustrophobic. I knocked on the door, and it swung open almost immediately, revealing Sarah standing there in a cozy oversized sweater, her smile wide and inviting. As I stepped inside, I was hit by the scent of popcorn mixed with something sweet that I couldn't quite place. The living room was adorned with horror memorabilia. Posters of classic films plastered the walls, and a massive flat-screen TV was set up for the marathon. It was a horror fan's dream, but something about the room felt off, like I was stepping into a shrine rather than just someone's living space. We settled down on the couch, and as the first movie began, I tried to relax. The flickering screen cast eerie shadows across her face, enhancing that strange intensity in her eyes. As the film played, I found myself glancing around the room, taking in the odd decorations, clowns, skulls, and even a collection of knives displayed on the wall. I laughed it off, thinking it was just part of the charm, but my unease grew with each passing moment. Sarah was glued to the screen, her expression locked in a fierce concentration that made me wonder what she was really thinking. About halfway through the marathon, I excused myself to go to the bathroom. As I walked through the dimly lit hallway, I noticed how quiet the apartment was. The sound of the movie faded, and I felt a chill creep over me. The bathroom was small, with dark tiles and a single flickering light bulb. I splashed cold water on my face, tried to shake off the growing sense of dread. When I returned to the living room, Sarah was still focused on the screen, but something had changed. The atmosphere felt charged, electric. I sat back down, but the tension in the air was palpable, like a storm ready to break. As the next film started, I noticed Sarah stealing glances at me, her expression inscrutable. I tried to focus on the movie, but my heart raced. I couldn't help but feel like I was being watched, scrutinized. The feeling was suffocating, wrapping around me like a heavy blanket. The night dragged on, each film more intense than the last, and I felt myself retreating deeper into my mind. I made a mental note to leave soon, but then the final movie began. It was a classic slasher film, and as the tension built, I found myself on edge. Suddenly, the power flickered and then went out entirely, plunging us into darkness. The sound of the movie cut off, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. I could barely make out the outline of Sarah's face, but her eyes glinted in the dim light from the street outside. I felt a rush of panic. I fumbled for my phone, but it was dead. I was trapped in this pitch-black room with a woman I didn't know very well, and my instincts screamed at me to leave. Sarah laughed softly, a sound that sent chills down my spine. It was a strange, hollow laugh that echoed off the walls, and I felt the air grow heavier. She stood up, her silhouette moving toward me. I could barely see her face, but I could feel her eyes boring into me, studying me. I backed away instinctively, my heart pounding in my chest. I wanted to run, but where could I go? I was in her territory now, surrounded by her possessions. As she moved closer, I could see the glint of something in her hand. Was it a knife? My mind raced, and I was ready to bolt when she suddenly flicked on a small lamp, illuminating the room in a dim glow. What I saw next froze me in place. Sarah was standing there, holding a small cake with candles, her smile wide and almost manic. "Surprise!" she exclaimed, her voice dripping with excitement. It took me a moment to comprehend. The tension, the darkness, the strange collection of her decor, they were all part of a twisted game. I felt a mix of relief and confusion wash over me. But then I noticed the look in her eyes again, that predatory gleam. This wasn't just a fun night. She was obsessed with horror, and I realized I was the unwitting participant in her real-life horror story. My heart sank as it dawned on me. I wasn't just a date. I was a character in her chilling narrative. I smiled weakly, my mind racing for an escape plan. I had to get out of there, but as I took a step back, her expression darkened. The joy that had filled her face moments ago twisted into something sinister, and I knew then that the real horror was just beginning. I never thought I'd find myself scrolling through Tinder late at night, but there I was, half-heartedly swiping left and right, nursing a cold pizza and trying to ignore the gnawing loneliness that wrapped around me like a fog. My friends had been relentless in pushing me to give it a shot, insisting that the digital dating game was where it's at. I rolled my eyes at their enthusiasm but figured, why not? After all, what's the worst that could happen? I was just looking for a casual connection, maybe a drink or two, and if I was lucky, a decent conversation. I stumbled upon her profile. Her name was Lisa, and she looked like the kind of girl who could light up a room just by walking into it. Long, dark hair, a crooked smile that made her look approachable, and those piercing blue eyes that seemed to invite you in. Her bio was simple yet intriguing. Adventure at heart. Love the thrill of the unknown. Let's explore together. I felt a spark of curiosity ignite in me. I swiped right, my heart racing slightly more than it should have. As days passed, we matched, and soon enough, we were chatting. Lisa had this way of making even the most mundane topics feel exciting. We talked about our favorite places, our dreams, and our fears. She mentioned her love for ghost stories and urban legends, which felt oddly fitting considering the eerie vibe of the old town we both lived in. There was something about her that felt genuine, and before I knew it, we decided to meet up. We agreed to meet in a small, dimly lit cafe on the edge of town, a place known for its old-world charm and creaky wooden floors. The kind of spot that felt like it had stories trapped in its walls. I arrived early, nervously tapping my fingers on the table, trying to ignore the chill that seemed to creep in with the evening air. As the clock ticked closer to our meeting time, I felt a mix of excitement and anxiety swell within me. When she walked in, it was as if the whole room shifted. The air felt heavier, charged with something I couldn't quite place. She wore a long, dark coat, and as she approached my table, I noticed her eyes. They were even more striking in person, but there was an intensity to them that sent a shiver down my spine. We exchanged pleasantries, but beneath the surface, I could feel the tension building like a coiled spring. As we sipped our coffees, the conversation flowed easily, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something lurking beneath her cheerful exterior. She spoke animatedly about her love for exploring abandoned places, recounting a chilling tale about an old asylum on the outskirts of town. The way she described it sent chills racing through my spine, but I couldn't help but be captivated by her passion. The cafe began to empty out, and the dim light flickered ominously, casting long shadows across the room. Lisa suggested we take a walk around the nearby park, and though I hesitated, something in her eyes urged me to agree. The night air was crisp as we strolled through the park, our laughter echoing softly against the trees. But with each passing moment, the atmosphere shifted. The trees loomed overhead, their twisted branches resembling skeletal fingers reaching out to us. We wandered off the beaten path, and Lisa's excitement was palpable as she led me deeper into the park, away from the faint glow of the streetlights. The night felt alive, yet there was an underlying tension that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I caught her glancing behind us a few times, the smile on her face not quite reaching her eyes. She began sharing more ghost stories, each one darker than the last. As she spoke, I couldn't help but notice her expression shift, a wild glint dancing in her gaze. It was like she was feeding off the fear that was creeping into my mind. I tried to laugh it off, but her words wrapped around me like a noose, tightening with each tale of spirits and shadows. We reached a clearing where the moon hung high, casting an eerie glow over everything. Lisa stopped, her eyes scanning the darkness as if she were searching for something hidden. I felt a sudden urge to turn back. The thrill of the unknown had morphed into an unsettling dread. Yet, a part of me was still drawn to her, entranced by the mix of fear and fascination she stirred within me. Just then, she pointed toward a dilapidated old gazebo at the edge of the clearing, its wooden structure barely standing. "This place is said to be haunted," she said, a mischievous smile playing on her lips. "Shall we take a look?" My heart raced as we approached the gazebo. It felt like stepping into another world, one where shadows danced and whispered secrets. The air was thick with anticipation, and I could feel a pulse in my ears. I wanted to turn back, but the look in her eyes held me captive. Inside the gazebo, the atmosphere shifted again. It was heavier, almost suffocating. Lisa's excitement was palpable, but I was now acutely aware of the creeping darkness surrounding us. I took a step back, instinctively glancing around, but she was fixated on something just beyond my sight. "Do you feel that?" she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine, the hairs on my arms standing on end. It was as if the night itself was holding its breath, waiting. Suddenly, the air crackled, and I heard a rustling sound coming from the bushes nearby. My heart raced as panic clawed at my throat. I turned to Lisa, but she was no longer looking at me. Instead, her gaze was fixed on something in the distance, her expression transforming from excitement to something more primal. In that moment, something shifted within her, a darkness emerging that made my blood run cold. I felt trapped, the world around me fading as I realized I was no longer in control of the situation. The tales of ghosts and spirits she had spun were now manifesting in the very air we breathed. I tried to back away, but she reached for my arm, her grip tightening like a vice. I could see the change in her eyes, a flicker of something unrecognizable, something that felt ancient and sinister. The tension cracked like a whip, and I knew I had to escape. With a sudden burst of adrenaline, I broke free from her grasp, stumbling back out of the gazebo. The darkness loomed around me, and I sprinted down the path we had come from, the sound of her laughter echoing behind me. It was no longer the warm, inviting laugh I had heard earlier. It had morphed into something chilling, something that sent a wave of terror crashing over me. I ran, my heart pounding in my chest, the path ahead twisting and turning like a labyrinth. Each step felt heavier, as if the shadows were reaching for me, urging me to come back. But I couldn't look back. I had to get away. Finally, I burst into the light of the street lamps, gasping for breath, the familiar sounds of the town surrounding me again. I turned to look back, half expecting to see her emerging from the darkness. But the park was silent. Days passed, and I avoided her messages, my heart still racing at the memory of that night. But one evening, as I sat scrolling through Tinder, I was met with a chilling notification. "Missed you." It was her, the same piercing blue eyes now staring back at me. But this time, behind her smile, I could see the shadows lingering, waiting. I realized then that I had stepped into a world I didn't understand, one where the thrill of adventure came with a price. I had thought I was the one taking a risk, but it was clear now that I was merely a pawn in her game. The darkness crept in around me, and I knew there was no escaping the allure of the unknown. I should have known better. I mean, who really meets someone on a dating app and expects it to end well? But there I was, scrolling through Tinder one Friday night, half-heartedly swiping left and right while trying to avoid the same old predictable bios. That's when I stumbled upon her profile. Her name was Clara, and her photos had a sort of vintage flair that caught my eye. She looked like she had just stepped out of a classic film, soft curls, a warm smile, and a hint of mystery in her gaze. The caption said something about loving the thrill of the unknown, and I couldn't help but wonder what that meant. We matched almost instantly. I was surprised at how quickly she replied. Her messages were witty and engaging, and we fell into a rhythm that felt effortless. Clara spoke about her love for exploring abandoned places, and at first, I thought it was just a quirky interest, but there was a gleam in her words that made my heart race. She suggested we meet up the following weekend, and I found myself saying yes before I could even think about it. The location she picked was a small, run-down amusement park on the outskirts of town, rumored to be haunted. I felt a thrill at the idea, a mix of excitement and dread. The night of our date, the air was thick with mist, and the moon hung low in the sky, casting haunting shadows across the cracked pavement as I parked. The amusement park loomed ahead, its once vibrant colors faded into a ghostly palette. The rusty rides creaked in the wind, and the smell of damp earth filled my lungs. I hesitated for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest. Was this really a good idea? But Clara's face flashed in my mind, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about exploring the unknown. I pushed the door open, stepping into the darkness that enveloped the park. I wandered through the remnants of the past, the faint sound of my footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. The Ferris wheel stood tall but lifeless, its cars swaying gently as if beckoning me closer. I felt an odd chill run down my spine, but I brushed it off. This was all part of the adventure, right? My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I pulled it out to see a message from Clara. "I'm here. Where are you?" I glanced around, trying to spot her. The park felt like a maze of shadows, every corner hiding secrets from the past. I texted back, saying I was near the entrance, but there was no response. I waited, pacing nervously, but something about the silence sent a wave of anxiety through me. I decided to head deeper into the park, hoping to find her. As I walked, the atmosphere grew heavier, and I could hear the distant sound of what I thought was laughter. But it was off, distorted, echoing in a way that made my skin crawl. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck rise. With every step, I searched for signs of Clara, But the more I wandered, the more I realized I was alone. Minutes turned into what felt like hours, and I began to question my decision. Just as I was about to turn back, I spotted a flickering light near the old funhouse, the warped mirrors reflecting back a fragmented version of reality. I hesitated, the urge to run battling with my curiosity. Maybe Clara was inside. I took a deep breath and moved toward the light. Inside the funhouse, the air was stale, and the floor creaked beneath my weight. The walls were a kaleidoscope of colors, but they only added to the disorienting atmosphere. I felt like I was walking through a twisted dream. I called out for Clara, but my voice echoed back, swallowed by the shadows. I stepped cautiously, the laughter I had heard earlier resurfacing in my mind. It felt closer now, almost like it was mocking me. As I approached a mirror, I caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye. A figure stood in the reflection behind me, but when I turned, there was nothing there. My heart raced as I turned back to the mirror, my mind racing with thoughts. Was it just my imagination? I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I could almost feel the weight of someone's gaze boring into my back. Suddenly, my phone buzzed again, breaking the tension. It was Clara. "I'm in the funhouse. Come find me." The message sent a jolt of hope through me, but there was something off about it. I could feel my instincts screaming at me, urging me to leave. But curiosity and concern propelled me deeper into the maze. I navigated through the winding corridors, the laughter growing louder, more chaotic. It felt like a sinister symphony, and I felt the panic rising in my chest. I could hear Clara's voice now, soft and melodic, intertwined with the laughter. It was both comforting and unsettling. I followed the sound, my heart pounding, until I reached a room filled with mirrors. This was it. I stepped inside, my breath hitching in my throat. There she was, standing in the center, her back to me, her dark hair cascading down her shoulders like a waterfall. I called out her name, but she didn't turn around. Instead, the laughter erupted, echoing off the walls, and I felt a chill seep into my bones. I took a step closer, and the moment I did, Clara's head whipped around, her eyes wide and almost feral. The warmth I had felt from her earlier had vanished, replaced by something cold and calculating. My stomach dropped as I realized the truth in that moment. This wasn't the Clara I had been chatting with. This was something else entirely. "Why did you come?" she asked, her voice low and dripping with a sweetness that felt wrong. "You shouldn't have come here." Panic surged through me, and I turned to run, but the mirrors distorted my reflection, making me feel trapped within a twisted carnival of my own mind. I stumbled backward, trying to find the exit, but the laughter morphed into a cacophony of voices, each one pulling me deeper into the funhouse's grip. I could feel Clara's presence behind me, a predator waiting to pounce. I finally managed to find a door, yanking it open and bursting out into the night air. I didn't stop running until I reached my car, fumbling with my keys as I glanced back at the funhouse. The laughter still echoed in my ears, mingling with Clara's haunting gaze. As I drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling of being followed. Every shadow felt elongated, every corner of my eye filled with something lurking just out of sight. I made it home, slamming the door behind me, the adrenaline still coursing through me. I collapsed onto my bed, trying to breathe normally, but the images of Clara's twisted smile haunted my thoughts. The next morning, I woke up in a cold sweat, convinced it was all a bad dream. I picked up my phone to check for messages, hoping for some semblance of normalcy. But my heart sank when I saw the notifications. Clara had messaged me again, but this time the words chilled me to the bone. "I'll find you, and next time, you won't escape." I stared at the screen, my blood running cold. I thought I had left the nightmare behind, but I realized it was only just beginning. Clara was still out there, and I could feel the weight of her gaze from the shadows, waiting for me to let my guard down again. I had never been one for online dating, but after a few months of being single, I thought, why not? It was the age of swiping left and right, and everyone seemed to be doing it. So, I set up my Tinder profile, hoping to meet someone interesting. The first few matches were harmless enough, just casual chats and awkward small talk. But then, I matched with someone named Jake. His profile was simple but intriguing. A picture of him hiking in the mountains, a big smile, and a bio that read, "Adventure at heart, looking for someone to share spontaneous road trips and late-night talks." We hit it off immediately. Our conversations flowed, like we had known each other for years. He was charming and funny, and he seemed genuinely interested in my life. After a week of chatting, he suggested we meet up for coffee at a local cafe. I hesitated for a moment, feeling that familiar flutter of nerves, but I agreed. It felt like a normal step in this weird world of dating apps. The day of our meeting arrived, and I arrived at the cafe a little early, excited and anxious. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, blending with the sweet scent of pastries. I picked a table near the window, my heart racing as I scanned the crowd for any sign of him. I imagined what he might look like in person, tall and rugged, perhaps just like in his pictures. When he walked in, my heart skipped a beat. Jake was even more handsome than his photos. He wore a dark flannel shirt that accentuated his athletic build, and his eyes sparkled with mischief as he approached me. The initial awkwardness faded quickly, and we talked for hours, losing track of time as we shared stories about our lives, our dreams, and our fears. He had a way of making everything feel intimate, like we were the only two people in the world. After coffee, he suggested we take a walk through the nearby park. It was a stunning autumn day, and the leaves were a tapestry of reds and yellows. We strolled along the winding paths, laughing and joking as we talked about everything from our favorite movies to our childhood memories. But as we ventured deeper into the park, I started to feel an odd shift in the atmosphere. The laughter faded into the background, replaced by a strange tension that hung in the air. Jake mentioned something about the park being a great place for night walks, and I chuckled, but something felt off. The sun was starting to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the ground. I didn't want to seem rude, but I suggested we head back. He smiled, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes that made me uneasy. Was it disappointment or something darker? We walked back toward the cafe, but instead of taking the shortest route, Jake led me down a less traveled path. The trees closed in around us, their branches stretching like skeletal fingers. I felt a chill run down my spine as the fading light transformed the friendly park into an eerie maze. My instinct screamed that I should turn back, but I didn't want to offend him. After all, we were having such a great time, right? That's when he stopped and turned to face me, his expression suddenly serious. He said he wanted to show me something special, something that not many people knew about. My heart raced as he gestured for me to follow him deeper into the woods. Against my better judgment, I nodded and trailed behind him, curiosity mingling with trepidation. As we ventured further, the path became overgrown, and the sounds of the city faded away, leaving an unsettling silence in its wake. My heart pounded in my chest, and I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. Just when I thought I might turn back, we arrived at a small, hidden clearing. In the center stood an abandoned gazebo, its wooden frame weathered and covered in moss. Jake walked ahead and began to explore the gazebo, his voice echoing in the stillness as he described how people used to gather there for picnics and celebrations. I stood back, feeling increasingly uneasy. The air felt thick and oppressive, and the shadows cast by the trees seemed to close in on me. I wanted to leave, but I didn't want to come off as scared or rude. As I stepped into the gazebo, I noticed strange markings carved into the wooden beams. They looked like symbols, some of which seemed familiar but twisted. Jake was talking animatedly about the history of the place, but I barely heard him. I was too busy scanning the area, my instincts screaming that something was very wrong. Suddenly, I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. I turned, and my blood ran cold. A figure was standing just beyond the tree line, watching us. My heartbeat thundered in my ears as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. The figure was cloaked in darkness, blending into the shadows, but I could feel its gaze locked onto me. Panic surged through me, and I stepped back, almost stumbling as I bumped into Jake. He turned to me, a strange smile on his face that sent a chill down my spine. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost," he said, but his tone was off, almost mocking. I forced a laugh, trying to play it cool, but I could feel the tension crackling in the air. I glanced back toward the figure, and it was gone. I was sure I hadn't imagined it. Something was watching us, and the feeling of being hunted clawed at my insides. My instinct screamed for me to run, but I stayed rooted in place, torn between fear and the desire to trust Jake. Jake stepped closer, his demeanor shifting as he leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. He began to weave a story about the park, the gazebo, and how it was rumored to be a place where strange rituals took place. My stomach dropped as he spoke, the chill of his words wrapping around me like a noose. Suddenly, I caught a glimpse of movement again, and this time it was closer, a shadow darting between the trees. I felt a wave of nausea hit me. I had to get out of there. Just as I took a step back, Jake reached out, gripping my arm with surprising strength. His eyes locked onto mine, the warmth replaced by something dark and wild. In that moment, I realized I hadn't just been on a date. I had been lured into something sinister. His charming persona had cracked, revealing a twisted side that sent my heart racing. I yanked my arm away, adrenaline coursing through my veins, and turned to run. The clearing was a blur as I sprinted down the path, branches snagging at my clothes and skin. I could hear Jake's footsteps behind me, his laughter echoing like a haunting melody. The trees closed in around me, and I stumbled, panic clawing at my throat. I burst through the underbrush and into the nearby street, gasping for breath as I turned to see if he was still coming. But the park was empty behind me, the shadows swallowing the path I had just fled. I didn't stop running until I reached my apartment, slamming the door shut and locking it behind me. My heart raced as I leaned against the door, trying to catch my breath. The chilling realization washed over me. I had escaped, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Jake had planned something far more sinister than a simple date. I felt sick to my stomach, wondering what could have happened if I hadn't trusted my instincts. Days turned into weeks, and I tried to forget the encounter. I deleted my Tinder profile and swore off dating apps for good, but the memory lingered like a dark shadow, creeping into my thoughts when I least expected it. I'd occasionally replay the moment in the gazebo, the fear, the laughter, the lurking figure that I had seen. Then one night, scrolling through social media, I stumbled upon an article titled, "Missing Persons in the Area." My blood ran cold as I saw his face staring back at me, Jake. The article described how he had gone missing after a series of dates with different women, all of whom had vanished without a trace. My heart raced as I realized I was just another name on a growing list. And as I sat there, the weight of my decision pressed down on me. I heard a soft knock at my door. My breath caught in my throat as I froze, memories flashing through my mind. The knocking continued, rhythmic and persistent. I felt my heart pound as I glanced at the door, dread creeping into my thoughts. But then, a twisted smile crept onto my face. I hadn't told anyone about my date with Jake. No one knew where I had been that day. The knock grew louder, more frantic. I took a step back, my heart racing, and then I heard a familiar voice call out my name from the other side. "Hey, it's me. Let me in." The irony hit me hard. I had escaped, but now I was face to face with the very thing I had feared. The voice outside was unmistakably Jake's, and the door felt like a fragile barrier between my past and an uncertain future.